During these past 2 years, we have had to adapt to an awful lot. If you'd have asked us just 3 years ago how we would cope if we had to lock down inside of our homes for months and months on end, we couldn't have imagined how we would cope. But somehow we all managed to adapt to the isolation, to working from home, the masks, the technology, the fear, and the disappointments. We found ways to cope with a life-threatening pandemic by adapting to changing circumstances. Humans are blessed with the ability to adapt to our surroundings. We are blessed, and we are also cursed. Adaptation allows us to make adjustments to our behavior in order to cope with changing realities. But adaptation can also allow us to continue relatively unchanged. For those of us who live as the wealthiest Christians who have ever walked this planet, the privileges we claim for ourselves allow us to continue our lives in relative security, provided we adapt ever so slightly to our changing circumstances. And therein lies the curse of adaptation. Adaptation allows for the maintenance of the status quo. In the grand scheme of things, the fundamental realities of our lives have not been transformed by the monumental challenges of a life-threatening pandemic. Sure, we may have tweaked a few things here and there, but we are still the privileged few on this planet. And our planet, the only home we have, is still careening toward becoming largely uninhabitable by humans. We are clever enough to understand that the status quo cannot hold, and we are adaptable enough to carry on without being transformed by the reality that our behavior is threatening the survival of billions of people. We have largely adapted to the terrifying realities of climate change without letting the facts of our realities transform us. Now, I used to put my faith in the intelligence of our species to adapt. These days, I'm beginning to see that the intelligence of our species may only be able to help us to adapt when what we need in order to survive is to be transformed. Transformation of the way in which we live threatens the status quo, and without threatening the status quo, we will not be able to adapt quickly enough to survive. To date, our human intelligence is failing us. The facts we are all well versed in, those facts, we know the facts, we've heard them over and over again. And we have all, myself included, chosen simply to tinker with a few minor adaptations rather than seriously engaging our need for radical transformation of the status quo. So I have to ask what it will take for us to open ourselves to the possibility of the radical transformation necessary to meet the challenges which are raining down upon us. Status quo, the existing state of affairs, has been good to those of us who live privileged lives here in Canada. And if you're watching on a screen somewhere other than in Canada, well, believe me, the fact that you have a screen to watch means that you are privileged. Our wealth makes it possible to take time out in our day to come here to this place or to turn on a screen and spend some time contemplating that which is beyond the beyond and beyond that also. The luxuries we enjoy afford us the time, the space, the tools, the wealth, and the good company of like-minded individuals to explore the mystery with. We are richly blessed, blessed enough to have the wherewithal to maintain the status quo longer than the vast majority of our siblings on this planet will be able to. Today, lots of privileged people just like us all over the world will gather like us to listen to the gospel reading which is proclaimed on this, the fifth Sunday of Easter, which comes to us from the anonymous gospel storyteller we know as John, who writes, "Once Judas had left, Jesus said, 'Now is the chosen one glorified, and God is glorified as well. If God has been glorified, God will in turn glorify the chosen one, and will do so very soon. My little children, I won't be with you much longer. You'll look for me, but what I said to the temple authorities, I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment. Love one another. And you are to love one another the way I have loved you. This is how all will know that you are my disciples, that you truly love one another.'" The way the anonymous gospel storyteller sets this story of Jesus last night with his followers puts Judas just leaving the room. Jesus is about to be betrayed, and the status quo will not hold. Jesus is about to be executed by the forces of empire. Now, Jesus is a smart guy. He knows full well that the status quo will not hold. Jesus knows he is going to die. He tells the people he loves, where I am going, you cannot come. No amount of tinkering with adaptations will suffice. Jesus proposes total transformation. I give you a new commandment. Love one another. And you are to love one another the way I have loved you. This is how all will know that you are my disciples, that you love one another. Love one another. It sounds so simple to our ears. Just love one another. The trouble is, we have prettied love up with all sorts of hearts and flowers for so long now that we have forgotten the power of love to transform everything. In the recess of our imagination, we piece together the story of what love looked like for the followers of Jesus as if it were some kind of fluffy cloud world in which they lived back then. And we imagine that it was easier, simpler for them back then. In our mind's eye, we see those happy, clappy Christians smiling as if they haven't got a care in the world, welcoming strangers and being love, and it's all so peaceful, so beautiful. The word groovy from the 60s comes to mind when you think of that hearts and flowers kind of love. Who wouldn't be able to peace out back then? Just love one another. It doesn't seem to measure up somehow, at least not in the hearts and flowers kind of love that we're used to. The impotent, easy loving of we privileged few, the kind of love which demands adaptation without transformation. This cannot be what a man on his way to his execution was calling for. It had to be more than this hearts and flowers, happy clappy kind of Christianity. Jesus spent his life teaching people about the kind of love which is beyond the hearts and flowers that we privileged few are so fond of. Cornel West describes this kind of love, this love that Jesus was talking about, as justice, when he says that justice is what love looks like in public. Justice is what makes the love which Jesus commands transformative. Justice transforms, and without justice, we cannot be the love humanity so desperately needs us to be in order to transform the status quo into a way of being which is life-giving. Now, for those of you who aren't convinced that talk of love can save us, who'd rather simply have the facts, well, let's take a long, hard look at the status quo. Now, this week, I have been absolutely devouring this book by Kim Stanley Robinson. It's called The Ministry of the Future. The novel takes its title from an international agency set up by the Paris Agreement to concern itself with future generations. The ministry that concerns itself with future generations. And the book is laced with all sorts of facts about the status quo. Stanley Robinson writes this: possibly some of the richest 2% of the world's population have now decided to give up the pretense that progress or development or prosperity can be achieved for all 8 billion of the world's people. For quite a long time, a century or two, this prosperity for all goal had been the line taken. That although there was inequality now, if everyone just stuck to the program and did not rock the boat, the rising tide would eventually float, and even the most high and dry among them would rise. But early in the 21st century, it became clear that the planet was incapable of sustaining everyone alive at Western levels. And at that point, the richest pulled away into their fortress mansions, bought the governments or disabled them from action against them, and bolted their doors to wait it out until some poorly theorized better time, which really came down to just the remainder of their lives, and perhaps the lives of their children if they were feeling optimistic. And beyond that, let the deluge come. A rational response to an intractable problem, but not really. There was scientifically supported evidence to show that if the Earth's available resources were to be divided up equally among all 8 billion humans, everyone would be fine. They would all be adequately, and the scientific evidence very robustly supported the contention that people living at adequacy and confident that they would stay there were healthier and thus happier than rich people. So the upshot of this equal division would be an improvement for all, including the rich, because they'd be happier. Rich people would often snort at this particular study, then go off and lose sleep over their bodyguards, tax lawyers, legal risks. Love, not at all fungible, overeating and overindulgence, generally resulting health problems, ennui, and existential angst. In short, an insomniac faceplant into the realization that science was once again right, that money cannot buy health or love or happiness. Robinson goes on, although it has to be added that a reliable sufficiency of money is indeed necessary to scaffold the possibility of those good things, the happy medium, the Goldilocks zone in terms of personal income, according to sociological analysis, seemed to rest at around $100,000 US a year. $100,000 US a year. That's adequate. People feel okay and could be happy at $100,000 a year. The 2000 Watt Society, started in Switzerland in 1998, calculated that if all the energy consumed by households were divided by the total number of humans alive, each would have the use of about 2,000 watts of power, meaning about 48 kilowatt hours per day. The Society's members then tried living on that amount of electricity to see what it would feel like, and they found that it was by no means a form of suffering. It was even reported to feel stylish and meaningful to those who undertook this experiment. So there is energy enough for all. Is there food enough for all? Yes. Is there housing enough for all? There could be. There's no real problem there. Same for clothing. Is there health care enough for all? Not yet. But there could be. It's a matter of training people and making small technological objects. There's no planetary constraint on that one. Same with education. So all the necessities for a good life are abundant enough, and everyone alive today could have them. Food, water, shelter, clothing, healthcare, and education. Is there enough security for all? Security is the feeling that results from being confident that you have all the things I just listed, and your children will have them too. So security is a derivative effect. There can be enough security for all, but only if all have security. If 1% of the humans alive control everyone's work and take far more than their share of the benefits of that work, while also blocking the project of equality and sustainability, however they could, that project would become more difficult. This would go without saying, except it needs to be said. To be clear, concluding in brief, Robinson says, there is enough for all. So, he insists, there should be no more people living in poverty, and there should be no more billionaires. Enough should be a human right, a floor below which no one can fall, also a ceiling above which no one can rise. Enough is as good as a feast or better. Enough for everyone means transforming the status quo. I'm struck by the way in which Stanley Robinson lays out the facts, transforming our perceptions of the status quo into a vision of reality which sounds so much like the basileia ton theon, the kingdom of God, which Jesus taught as a new kind of status quo in which everyone has enough. The basileia of divinity, this way of being love in the world, is not the kind of justice which can be achieved merely by adapting. This kind of justice requires transformation. We have been richly blessed. And by we, I do not mean we privileged few. I mean the whole planet. We have been richly blessed. The earth's blessings are more than enough for everyone, and we have taken more than our fair share. Today, here and now, loving one another requires the kind of justice which is transformative. Listen again to the transformative cry for justice. I give you a new commandment, love one another, and you're to love one another the way I have loved you. This is how all will know that you are my followers, that you truly love one another. We have been richly blessed, blessed to be a blessing. Let us be transformed. Let us be justice, so that all may know in us the love which is transformative. Amen.